Midnight Confessions. The Seattle rain drummed against Detective Sophia Blake's windshield as she pulled into the abandoned pier parking lot. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, knuckles white against the black leather. 3 witnesses dead in 2 weeks, all supposedly under federal protection, all killed with the same surgical precision that spoke of professional training. The anonymous call had come at 11:47 p.m., a voice distorted by electronic modification. Pier 19, Warehouse 7. Come alone. I know who's killing your witnesses. Every instinct screamed trap, but the caller had mentioned details only someone close to the investigation could know. The specific wounds, the timeline, even the fact that victim number 2 had been moved post-mortem, information that hadn't been released to the press or shared beyond the core investigation team. Sophia checked her service weapon one final time and stepped into the Seattle night. The pier stretched before her like a skeletal finger pointing into Elliott Bay, fog rolling in from the water to blur the edges of reality. Warehouse 7 sat at the far end, its windows dark and empty as dead eyes. She was 50 feet from the building when a figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, lean, moving with the fluid grace of someone comfortable in darkness. As he stepped into the pool of light cast by a security lamp, Sophia got her first clear look at him. Mid-30s, sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, dark hair deliberately tousled, as if he'd run his fingers through it moments before. His clothes were expensive but worn casually. Designer jeans, leather jacket that had seen real use, boots that had walked through more than city streets. What struck her most were his eyes, deep brown, almost black, and completely unreadable. Detective Blake. His voice was warm whiskey over gravel, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place. Thank you for coming. You called me here. Sophia's hand rested casually near her holster. Said you had information about my case. Julian Cross. He didn't extend a hand for shaking, instead pulling a cigarette from his jacket pocket. And I have more than information. I have answers. Julian Cross isn't a real name. His smile was quick and sharp. Real enough for our purposes. Your witnesses, Rebecca Martinez, Thomas Chen, Jessica Park, they weren't random targets. Sophia's pulse quickened. Those names hadn't been released publicly. Keep talking. They were all scheduled to testify against Vincent Romano next month. Romano's trial for human trafficking, racketeering, murder. Julian lit his cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating features that looked like they'd been carved from marble. Someone's cleaning house. Romano's been in maximum security for 8 months. He can't order hits from... Romano has people on the outside, people with resources, connections, and a very specific skill set. Julian took a long drag. People like me. Every alarm in Sophia's head started screaming. Her hand moved closer to her weapon. Are you confessing to murder, Mr. Cross? I'm confessing to being very good at finding people who don't want to be found. The difference is, I used to work for Romano. Now I work against him. Julian's eyes never left hers. 3 months ago, I learned about the contract on your witnesses. I tried to warn the marshals, but someone intercepted my communications. Why should I believe you? Julian reached into his jacket, slowly, deliberately, giving her time to draw if she chose to. Instead of a weapon, he produced a manila envelope. Because I have proof. The photographs inside made Sophia's blood run cold. Rebecca Martinez entering a safe house that was supposed to be classified. Thomas Chen meeting with a federal marshal whose face was clearly visible. Jessica Park walking her dog on a route that should have been randomly assigned daily. Someone's been feeding the killer information, Julian said quietly. Someone with access to WITSEC protocols, safe house locations, daily schedules. A federal marshal. or someone with access to their communications. Julian dropped his cigarette and crushed it under his boot. The killer isn't just hunting your witnesses, detective. He's hunting them with inside help. Sophia stared at the photos, her mind racing. If Julian was telling the truth, then the investigation was compromised from the inside. If he was lying, then she was standing alone on a deserted pier with a potential killer. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Help me find the leak. Help me stop the killer before he eliminates the remaining witnesses." Julian stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, mixed with cigarette smoke and something else. Gunpowder, she realized. "There are 2 more people on Romano's list. If we don't find them first, they'll be dead within 72 hours. I know Romano's people, their methods, their safe houses. You have official access, resources, the ability to move freely through law enforcement channels." Julian's dark eyes held hers. "Separately, we're just obstacles for the killer to eliminate. Together, we might actually save lives." A foghorn sounded in the distance, its mournful call echoing across the water. Sophia realized she was standing at a crossroads, about to make a decision that would either save innocent lives or destroy her career, possibly her life. "If I agree to work with you," she said carefully, "how do I know you won't just disappear when things get dangerous?" Julian smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes. "Detective Blake, I've been in danger every day for the past 3 months. The only question is whether you're brave enough to join me." As she looked into those dark, unreadable eyes, Sophia made her choice. Dangerous alliance. Sophia agreed to meet Julian the next evening at a 24-hour diner in Capitol Hill, far from any law enforcement facilities. She'd spent the day running the photos through facial recognition software and cross-referencing the locations with federal databases. Everything checked out, which somehow made her more nervous, not less. Julian was already there when she arrived, sitting in a corner booth with clear sightlines to both entrances. He'd ordered coffee but hadn't touched it, his attention focused on the street outside. "Paranoid much?" Sophia slid into the opposite seat. "Alive much," he corrected. "I pulled the files on the remaining witnesses. Dr. Amanda Foster, cardiologist, scheduled to testify about Romano using her clinic to treat injured enforcers, and Marcus Webb, Romano's former accountant, who kept detailed records of every transaction." Sophia leaned forward. "Foster's been moved 3 times in the past month. Webb's location is need-to-know only, which means whoever's feeding information to the killer has very high clearance." Julian finally took a sip of his coffee, grimaced. "I tracked down one of Romano's former associates yesterday. He's scared, wants out, but he gave me something useful." "What kind of something?" Julian pulled out his phone and showed her a grainy photograph. A man in his 50s, with silver hair and cold blue eyes, entering what looked like a government building. "Viktor Petrov, ex-Spetsnaz, now freelance. He's Romano's go-to guy for problems that need to disappear permanently." Sophia studied the image. "You're sure this is our killer? Petrov doesn't just kill people, he erases them, makes it look like accidents, disappearances, suicides. The surgical precision you mentioned, that's his signature." Julian's voice dropped. "He's also ghost. No permanent address, multiple identities, moves constantly. The only constant is that he always completes his contracts. How do we find him? We don't. We let him find us." Julian leaned back. "Petrov's been tracking the witnesses using inside information, but what if we fed him false information? What if we made him think he knew where Dr. Foster was hiding?" Sophia felt a chill. "You want to use her as bait." "I want to use the idea of her as bait. We set up a fake safe house, complete with federal protection detail. When Petrov shows up to eliminate Foster, we'll be waiting." It was dangerous, possibly insane, but it was also the first proactive plan anyone had offered. Sophia found herself nodding. "I'll need to clear this with no." Julian's voice was sharp. "The moment you involve official channels, the leak will know. Petrov will disappear, and your witnesses will still die, just more slowly." "Then how do we set up a safe house without federal resources?" Julian's smile was predatory. "Leave that to me." The next 12 hours blurred together in a haze of preparation. Julian seemed to have contacts everywhere: a retired cop who provided surveillance equipment, a former military medic who agreed to play Dr. Foster, even a federal marshal Julian claimed was clean, who helped stage the fake protection detail. Sophia watched him work with growing amazement and unease. He moved through Seattle's underground networks like he'd been born to them, calling in favors from people who clearly respected and feared him in equal measure. "You're not just some ex-federal agent, are you?" she asked as they positioned themselves. "In the observation post across from the fake safe house, I'm someone who's very good at staying alive in dangerous situations." Julian adjusted his binoculars. "Does it matter what I was before?" "It matters because I'm trusting you with my life. And I'm trusting you with mine." He looked at her directly. "In about 3 hours, one of the world's most dangerous killers is going to walk into our trap. If this goes wrong, we don't get to be wrong twice." At 2:17 a.m., Petrov made his move. Sophia watched through her scope as the silver-haired man approached. The safe house within human patience, studying the building for 20 minutes before making his approach. He moved like liquid shadow, avoiding security cameras and blind spots with the precision of someone who'd done this countless times before. "He's good," Julian murmured into their radio link. "Too good," Sophia whispered back. "Something feels—" The explosion lit up the Seattle night like a second sun. The fake safe house erupted in flames, the blast wave shattering windows for blocks around. But instead of entering the building, Petrov had somehow known it was a trap and decided to eliminate the threat by burning it down with everyone inside. "The medic!" Sophia gasped, rising from her position. Julian grabbed her arm. "She got out. Look!" Through the smoke and chaos, Sophia could see their fake Dr. Foster stumbling away from the building, helped by one of the fake marshals. But Petrov was moving toward them, a silenced pistol appearing in his hand. Without thinking, Sophia broke cover. She sprinted across the street, her own weapon drawn, shouting for the civilians to get down. Petrov spun toward her, his cold blue eyes calculating angles and possibilities in the fraction of a second before he fired. The bullet whined past her ear as she dove behind a parked car. Return fire came from behind her, Julian providing cover as she scrambled for better position. But Petrov was already moving, using the smoke and confusion to disappear into the maze of alleys behind the building. "He's gone," Julian said, appearing beside her with his own smoking pistol. "But we got something." He held up a small electronic device. "Tracker. I managed to tag his jacket during the confusion." Sophia stared at him. In all the chaos, the gunfire, the life-or-death desperation of the moment, Julian had somehow gotten close enough to plant a tracking device on one of the world's most dangerous assassins. "Who are you, really?" she whispered. Julian's dark eyes reflected the flames still consuming their fake safe house. "Someone who's been hunting Viktor Petrov for a very long time," as sirens wailed in the distance, and the tracker beeped steadily. On Julian's phone, Sophia realized she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She was no longer investigating a case. She was at war. Part 3. Unraveling threads, the tracker led them to a warehouse district south of the city, where Petrov had apparently gone to ground. Julian insisted they wait until daylight. "He's expecting pursuit in the dark, when he has the advantage." So they spent the pre-dawn hours in Julian's surprisingly well-appointed safe house. It was then that Sophia began noticing the inconsistencies. The apartment was too perfect, too prepared. Military-grade communications equipment, Detailed files on Romano's organization, photographs of people she didn't recognize but who looked important, and weapons, lots of weapons, all carefully maintained and clearly well used. You said you worked for Romano 3 months ago, Sophia said, examining a rifle that looked like it had seen recent action. But some of these files are dated back 2 years. Julian emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 cups of coffee. I said I learned about the contract 3 months ago. I've been building a case against Romano much longer than that. Building a case for who? For myself. Julian set down her coffee and moved to the window, checking the street below with practiced efficiency. Sometimes justice doesn't come through official channels, Sophia. Sometimes it comes through people like me. People like you who do what? Exactly. Julian was quiet for a long moment. When he turned back to her, his expression was unreadable. People who understand that some monsters can only be stopped by other monsters. The tracker showed Petrov had remained stationary for 4 hours. When they finally approached the warehouse, Julian moved with a confidence that spoke of familiarity with such operations. He directed Sophia through entry procedures she'd never learned in police academy, used hand signals that seemed more military than law enforcement. The warehouse was empty except for signs of recent habitation. Sleeping bag, canned food, detailed. Maps of Seattle with locations marked in red ink. Locations that, Sophia realized with growing horror, corresponded to the homes and workplaces of everyone connected to Romano's case, including her own apartment. He's been watching all of us, she whispered, staring at a photograph of herself leaving her building that morning. How long has he been in Seattle? Julian studied the maps with professional interest. Weeks, maybe months. This level of surveillance takes time. He photographed everything with methodical precision, but he's moved on. The tracker shows him heading toward the waterfront. Julian! Sophia's voice was tight. How did you know about this warehouse? What do you mean? You led us straight here. No hesitation, no wrong turns. You've been here before. Julian's dark eyes met hers. I've been tracking Petrov for a long time, Sophia. I know his patterns, his preferred locations. That's what makes me useful to you. It was a reasonable explanation, but something cold settled in Sophia's stomach. She was starting to feel like she was always one step behind in a conversation she didn't fully understand. They spent the next day following the tracker deeper into Seattle's industrial district. Petrov was moving in patterns that seemed random, but Julian insisted were tactical. He's checking dead drops, confirming extraction routes, preparing for his next hit. Who's next? Sophia asked as they watched the tracker's steady progress from their surveillance position. Marcus Webb, Romano's accountant. Julian lowered his binoculars. Webb's been moved to a new safe house, but Petrov will find him. He always finds them. How can you be so sure? The terrible truth, Pier 47, stretched into Elliott Bay like an accusation. Sophia walked its length alone, her service weapon ready, but holstered, Julian's voice crackling through the earpiece he'd insisted she wear. I don't like this. His voice was tense. Petrov doesn't usually want to talk, he just kills. Maybe he wants to make a deal, Sophia murmured. Turn Romano over to save his own skin. Viktor Petrov doesn't make deals, he completes contracts. Sophia reached the end of the pier, where a figure waited in the shadows between 2 shipping containers. But as he stepped into the light, she realized it wasn't the silver-haired killer from the photographs. It was Marcus Webb. Romano's former accountant looked nothing like his Witsec photos, thinner, paler, his eyes darting constantly as if expecting attack from any direction. He clutched a manila envelope against his chest like armor. Detective Blake. Webb's voice shook. Thank God you came alone. Mr. Webb, you're supposed to be in protective custody. How did you? There is no protective custody. Webb's voice cracked. Don't you understand? The marshals, the safe houses, the whole system, it's compromised, but not the way you think. Sophia's earpiece crackled with Julian's voice. Something's wrong. This feels like a setup. What do you mean, not the way I think? Sophia kept her attention on Webb while listening for Julian's guidance. Webb opened the envelope with trembling hands. I've been investigating the leaks in Witsec, following the money, tracking communications. I thought Romano had people on the inside, but I was wrong. He pulled out a series of photographs and financial records. The leak isn't someone working for Romano. Then who? Julian Cross. Webb's voice was barely a whisper. Your partner is Viktor Petrov. The world seemed to stop. Sophia's earpiece went silent. That's impossible, she said. But even as the words left her mouth, pieces began clicking into place. Julian's perfect knowledge of Petrov's methods, his ability to move through criminal networks like he belonged there, his admission that he used to kill for money. Look at the photographs, Webb pressed. I've been tracking Petrov for months. These were taken in Prague last year. Buenos Aires. 6 months ago, Vancouver 2 weeks before the murders started here. Sophia stared at the images. The man in the photographs was younger, clean-shaven, with different-colored hair. But the bone structure was unmistakable, the way he moved. The predatory grace she'd admired in Julian. It was him. He's been playing you from the beginning, Webb continued, using you to get close to the investigation, to track the witnesses he couldn't find on his own. Every time you shared information with him, you were helping him plan the next murder. But he saved my life. At the safe house, he saved your life because he still needs you. Webb's eyes were wide with terror. Detective Blake, Viktor Petrov doesn't just complete contracts. He enjoys them. He's been playing with you because it amuses him to watch a cop help him murder federal witnesses. Sophia's hand moved to her earpiece, intending to demand answers from Julian, but the device was silent, dead. He's been listening to everything, she whispered. Not anymore. Webb held up a small electronic device. Signal jammer. I activated it the moment you walked onto the pier. But, Detective, we need to leave. Now. He knows you've discovered the truth, and he's... The shot came from somewhere in the darkness beyond the shipping containers. Webb's head snapped back, a neat hole appearing in his forehead. He crumpled to the pier's wooden planks, the photographs scattering in the wind. Sophia spun, drawing her weapon, but Julian was already emerging from the shadows. The man she'd trusted, worked with, almost begun to care about, walked toward her with a silenced pistol in his hand and something cold and amused in his dark eyes. "Hello, Sophia," he said, and his voice was different now. The warmth was gone, replaced by something clinical and predatory. "I was hoping we'd have more time together before you figured it out, you son of a bitch." Sophia's gun was trained on his center mass, but he kept walking toward her with no apparent concern. "Language, Detective?" Julian, Victor smiled, and it was nothing like the expressions she'd seen before, though I suppose formal courtesy is rather pointless at this stage. "You killed them all. Rebecca, Thomas, Jessica. You used me to find them. I used you to refine their locations, yes. But Sophia, I didn't just use you." He stopped about 10 feet away, close enough to talk without raising his voice. "I genuinely enjoyed working with you. You're intelligent, brave, dedicated to justice. In another life, we might have made an excellent team." "In another life, you wouldn't be a psychopathic killer. Psychopathic is such an ugly word." Victor tilted his head, studying her like she was an interesting puzzle. "I prefer professionally focused. I complete contracts, Sophia. It's not personal. It felt pretty personal when you were lying to me about wanting justice for Isabella Reyes." Victor's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise. "Ah, you remembered that detail. Actually, Isabella was real, and I did kill her, but not because I was misinformed about her identity." "What do you mean?" "I killed her because she discovered what I really was. A federal agent getting too close to the truth about my work. Victor's smile returned, colder than before. She threatened to expose my entire operation, so I eliminated the threat. Sophia felt sick. How many others? Federal agents? Only 3, counting Isabella. Witnesses? Well, that depends on how you define witness. Victor seemed to be enjoying the conversation. Over the years, I've eliminated 47 people who posed threats to various organizations. Some were criminals themselves. Some were simply inconvenient. And now I'm inconvenient. Oh, Sophia. Victor's voice was almost gentle. You were always going to be inconvenient. The moment you started investigating the witness murders, you became a threat to my contract with Romano. I simply chose to manage that threat by getting close to you rather than eliminating you immediately. How considerate. I thought so. Victor raised his pistol slightly. But now that you know the truth, I'm afraid our partnership has reached its natural conclusion. Sophia's finger tightened on her trigger. Except I'm the one pointing a gun at you. Yes, you are. Victor nodded appreciatively. And you're wondering whether you can draw and fire before I kill you, whether your police training is faster than my professional experience. Stop talking and find out. Victor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Sophia, I've been wondering the same thing for 3 days now, ever since I realized you were starting to suspect me. It's been deliciously suspenseful. You're insane. I'm thorough. Victor's eyes glittered in the pier lights. Which is why I should mention that while we've been having this lovely conversation, you've been breathing a very fine aerosol I released from a device in my jacket pocket. Colorless, odorless, completely undetectable. Sophia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Seattle night. The effects take about 15 minutes to manifest. Dizziness, muscle weakness, eventually loss of consciousness. Victor checked his watch. We've been talking for 12 minutes. As if summoned by his words, Sophia felt a wave of vertigo wash over her. Her vision blurred slightly, and she had to consciously focus to keep her weapon steady. Bastard, she whispered. Professional, Victor corrected. Though I must admit, Sophia, you've provided me with the most entertaining hunt I've had in years. Using a police detective as an unwitting accomplice was inspired even by my standards. Sophia's legs were beginning to feel unsteady. She had maybe 3 minutes before whatever he'd poisoned her with dropped her completely. 3 minutes to end this. Any last words? Victor asked politely. Yeah, Sophia said, and pressed the GPS panic button Julian had given her days ago. The one he'd told her would summon help if things went wrong. The one she'd never thrown away. Victor's eyes widened slightly. Clever girl. Seemed like a good idea to keep some insurance, Sophia managed, though her voice was beginning to slur. Even if I didn't know what I'd need it for. Unfortunately, the cavalry won't arrive in time to save. You! Victor raised his pistol to firing position. But I respect the effort. As darkness closed around her vision and Victor Petrov's finger tightened on the trigger, Sophia realized she had one last card to play. She just hoped she was conscious, long enough to use it. Part 5. Final Gambit. Sophia's last conscious thought before the drug pulled her under was a memory from her police academy training. When you're outgunned, outmanned, and out of options, sometimes the best strategy is to let your opponent think they've already won. She woke up in a shipping container that reeked of rust and motor oil. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back, her service weapon gone, and her head felt like someone had used it for batting practice. But she was alive, which meant Victor still needed something from her. Ah, you're awake. Victor sat on a crate across from her, no longer bothering to maintain his Julian Cross persona. His posture was different, more predatory, less human. I was beginning to worry I'd miscalculated the dosage. Where are we? Sophia's voice came out as a croak. Warehouse district, about 2 miles from the pier. Private property, no security cameras, excellent soundproofing. Victor consulted his phone. We have perhaps an hour before your panic button brings unwanted attention to this area. Then why am I still breathing?